Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take the source materials you share with us, the research, the reports, the really dense articles, and we pull out the vital knowledge you need to be instantly well-informed.
Ready to go.
So, your mission today is focused squarely on modern communication. You want to gain, quick but still thorough insight into how digital stories are being told and consumed.
And weaponized. That's a big part of it now.
Absolutely. And we have a fascinating duality in the sources you provided for this. On the one hand, we have this big, ambitious title, Excerpts from Social Media Trends and Digital Narratives.
Right. It sounds huge. Like it's going to cover everything from algorithmic bias to the creator economy, a massive report.
Exactly. But then, when you actually look at the material we have to work with, it's one solitary thing. An incredibly specific artifact.
A single URL.
A single URL pointing straight to a TikTok video.
Yeah.
And that link, that's our entire mission target today.
And, that contrast is really the perfect way to start the analysis. The core subject, the dynamics of digital storytelling, it's just so critical for anyone who wants to understand not just what went viral, but the why behind it. Hidden machinery, yeah, of how we all communicate now. And what's fascinating here is that sheer breadth implied by the title. Social media trends and digital narratives. I mean, it suggests the authors were really trying to pin down these massive concepts.
Like, what would you expect from a title like that?
Well, you'd expect them to look at how the format of the content dictates the message itself, how virality even works, and maybe most importantly, how this really ephemeral, fleeting content somehow translates into lasting cultural narratives.
And our deep dive is trying to synthesize that entire worldview from just this one single piece of evidence.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the platform. We have that URL, https://vm.tiktok.znr60w7fs. It takes us right to TikTok, which is, you could argue it's the dominant platform for generating these narratives today.
Oh, without a doubt. And that choice of platform immediately tells us something about the author's focus. It forces us to define let's call it the grammar of the narrative they're interested in.
The grammar, I like that.
Yeah, because if they chose a TikTok link to represent a digital narrative, we have to assume they're talking about something that fits into that platform's really demanding structure. We're talking short-form video, attention spans measured in, fractions of a second?
Right. And this brings us right to one of the technical terms that was mentioned in the source context, rapid context switching. For you, the learner, this is so key to understanding how these narratives actually work.
It's everything.
It's not just that the videos are short. It's about how much they pack into those, 15 or 30 seconds. Multiple ideas, emotions, beats.
Exactly. Rapid context switching. It basically means the video demands a huge amount of mental processing power from you in a very, very short time.
So it might jump from, say, a setup shot to a reaction shot.
Yes, and cut to overlaid text. Then the background music changes, and that all happens in maybe 3 seconds. The narrative has to rely on visual shorthand and these universally recognizable cultural cues. There is just no time for exposition.
So the medium TikTok, it just fundamentally shapes the kind of narrative that can even exist on it. If this original report is discussing a trend, that trend has to prioritize speed, emotionality, and that immediate visceral impact.
And nuance becomes a liability.
A total liability.
It's sacrificed for impact. If the authors of the original source chose this specific video to illustrate a major trend or narrative, you have to assume they were choosing a piece of content that had achieved, peak efficiency in communication.
It's not relying on complex data or scholarly arguments.
No, not at all. It relies on an immediate emotional hook, and that hook could be anything. Humor, rage, inspiration, whatever works.
So if we go back to that big, promising title, Social Media Trends and Digital Narratives, we can probably guess the kind of broad categories the report must have been exploring.
We can sort of hypothesize 3 major areas where a specific digital narrative is most critical right now. First, you've got consumption culture.
Okay, so like unboxing videos, fast fashion trends, things that drive purchasing.
Precisely. Then second, you've got identity shaping. This is content where people explore or, perform different parts of their identity, often using shared sounds or dance templates.
And the third one, which is probably the most impactful,
has to be political fragmentation, where really complex political or social issues get boiled down to these easily digestible, emotionally charged sound bites that just reinforce the tribal lines that already exist.
So the authors needed an example of one of these 3 things that was so clean, so pure, it could just stand alone.
That's it. And that takes us right into our next segment. The deep dive into the citation itself, the fact that we just have the raw URL, no excerpts, no analysis, no description of what's even in the video.
Which raises this really important question, I think, that goes to the heart of how we consume information now. What does including a raw, unanalyzed link like this, without any context, tell us about what the original authors were trying to do?
Well, it implies a massive assumption on their part. Either they assume the content behind the link is universally known, or, and this is more likely, they assume their intended audience, probably other researchers or industry insiders, will actually stop reading.
Click the link.
Click the link, navigate away, watch the video, and then come back to the report having synthesized the author's point for themselves.
And isn't that shorthand a little intellectually lazy? At least from the learner's point of view. You're coming to this thing wanting distilled knowledge, but all you get is the front door, the citation.
It shifts the entire burden of critical analysis onto the consumer.
We see this all the time with information overload. You're presented with the source citation instead of the synthesized knowledge you were looking for. The link is basically a homework assignment.
It is. And in many ways, this specific link, this https://vm.tiktok.com/ZNR6TW7Fs, it acts as a kind of digital Rosetta Stone.
A Rosetta Stone, how so?
It says, the phenomenon I'm trying to describe, whether it's a new trend in political sound bites or a new way to sell a product, is perfectly illustrated by this 15-second clip right here. Go watch it.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me. The fact that we have this single, highly specific link, and not, say, a hashtag or a general search term, it suggests the author saw this one piece of content as a perfect, almost crystalline example.
Yes. They didn't choose a trend. They chose a single, definitive artifact of that trend.
Which, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this scarcity of information forces us to really analyze the intention behind this citation.
Yeah.
Why this one video out of millions?
Right. It must mean that the specific narrative in that link achieved three things. One, it was incredibly successful on the platform.
Okay, it had to be viral.
Viral, yeah. Two, it represented some kind of new mechanism for transmitting a narrative. And three, it was so concise that trying to describe it in words would actually be less efficient than just showing it.
Let's try a hypothetical to make this more concrete. Say the trend was something like the gamification of financial advice.
Okay, I'm with you.
So instead of writing a whole paragraph explaining how some finance influencers use quick cuts and aggressive sound effects to tell people to buy a stock, the author just links to the single most successful 30-second example of that exact thing.
That is the utility of the specific link. It serves as a digital microcosm, and our discussion has to pivot to the theoretical importance of the video, whatever it might be. It was deemed critically relevant to this huge topic. The selection is everything.
Which brings us to the implications for you, the listener. Even without clicking that link, we've actually managed to develop some pretty powerful takeaways about how knowledge is being packaged and presented right now.
We have. First, we established the technical mechanics. When you're seeking knowledge on digital narratives, you have to understand the platform's grammar. And TikTok's dominance means narratives are, by their very nature, transient, high impact, and visually driven.
And they often sacrifice complex truth for that immediate emotional resonance.
Absolutely. Then second, we've identified this critical reliance on intellectual shorthand, the hyperlinked citation that just replaces descriptive analysis.
The link doesn't just reference the information.
It is the information. And the second point is so vital for developing critical thinking. We have to reiterate the value of synthesis. The core lesson here is that understanding which specific examples are chosen, like this URL, is only the first step.
Only step one.
Just step one. The second, and far more valuable step, is asking the why. Why was this piece chosen? What narrative purpose does it serve in the author's larger argument? We need to know what they intended for us to infer after we watched it.
Right. The intellectual heavy lifting is what provides the lasting knowledge, not the fleeting image or the sound behind the URL. The source author is just assuming that when you click that link, you will instantly absorb the context of that entire cultural moment.
An assumption that might not hold up over time.
So, to summarize our deep dive, we analyzed the structure of the sources you gave us. We focused on that really promising title, social media trends and digital narratives, and the very specific solitary piece of evidence, the TikTok URL.
And the deep dive wasn't really into the content of the video itself. It couldn't be. It was into the structure of how modern knowledge about these trends is being presented to us.
And our final takeaway, tailored right to you, the learner, is this. The hunt for knowledge so often starts with just a cryptic map, a single link. The real deep dive isn't just following that link. It's understanding why that map was drawn in the first place.
What trend was the author trying to canonize, and what intellectual work did they just delegate to you, the reader? And that leads me to a final provocative thought for you to think about. Given that these digital narratives, especially on a platform like TikTok, are designed to be incredibly fast and fleeting.
A reflection of that rapid context switching we talked about.
Right, and just cultural transience in general. How long will the knowledge or the trend contained in that specific link, that https://vm.tiktok.com present R6TW7F does, how long will it actually remain relevant? Will it be culturally obsolete in 6 months? And if it is, what does the ephemeral nature of our most important evidence imply for long-term critical thinking and for creating any kind of lasting social analysis?
Something to think about long after you close the source materials.